Imagine a world on the brink of a catastrophic war between the United States and Russia in 2026 to 2027. This is not a scenario from a Cold War thriller but a sobering possibility that geopolitical analysts examine with a mix of dread and detachment. In this video, we will explore the likely outcomes of such a conflict, the alignment of nations, and the global consequences that would reshape our planet for generations. We base our analysis on current military capabilities, economic dependencies, historical alliances, and strategic doctrines. The United States and Russia possess the two largest nuclear arsenals, advanced conventional forces, and global reach. A war between them would be unlike any conflict in history, combining high-tech warfare with the constant threat of nuclear escalation. Let us begin by understanding the core factors that would drive such a war and the initial stages of the conflict. The opening phase of a US-Russia war in 2026 to 2027 would likely be a rapid, multi-domain assault. Russia would aim to neutralize NATO's forward presence in Eastern Europe, particularly in the Baltic states and Poland, using a combination of cyber attacks, electronic warfare, and precision strikes. The United States and NATO would respond with air and naval power, targeting Russian command centers, air defenses, and logistics. Both sides would employ advanced hypersonic missiles, stealth aircraft, and drones. A critical initial target would be the Kaliningrad exclave, a Russian military stronghold bristling with Iskander missiles and S-400 systems. The US would attempt to suppress these systems to prevent them from threatening NATO's eastern flank. Meanwhile, in the cyber domain, attacks would target critical infrastructure, power grids, financial systems, communication networks, and satellite systems. The US has superior cyber capabilities, but Russia has demonstrated sophisticated operations in Ukraine and elsewhere. The first few hours would see a global scramble to secure networks, with the potential for cascading failures that could disable entire regions. Naval and air superiority would be decisive. The US Navy, with its 11 aircraft carrier strike groups, would seek to dominate the Atlantic and Pacific. However, Russia has invested heavily in anti-access/area denial systems, such as the P-800 Onyx and Zircon hypersonic anti-ship missiles, deployed on ships, submarines, and aircraft. The US would face a severe challenge in projecting power close to Russian shores. The Baltic and Black Seas would become highly contested zones, with Russian submarines and coastal defenses threatening NATO shipping. In the air, the US F-35 and F-22 would face Russian Su-57 and Su-35 fighters, but the real threats are ground-based long-range surface-to-air missiles. The US would rely on electronic warfare and stealth to degrade Russian air defenses, while Russia would use decoys and mobile launchers to survive. A critical aspect would be the battle for space. Both nations would target each other's satellites, including GPS, communications, and reconnaissance systems. The loss of satellite services could cripple modern warfare, from precision navigation to missile warning. The side that maintains space superiority would have a significant advantage. The most terrifying aspect of a US-Russia war is the nuclear dimension. Both nations adhere to doctrines that allow for first use under certain conditions. Russia's current nuclear doctrine, updated in 2020, states that it may use nuclear weapons in response to aggression using conventional weapons when the existence of the state is threatened. The US maintains a policy of calculated ambiguity. A conventional war that starts to go badly for either side could escalate rapidly. For example, if NATO forces were on the verge of destroying Russian conventional forces or capturing key territory, Moscow might consider a limited nuclear strike to demonstrate resolve and force a ceasefire. The US would face a terrible choice: retaliate in kind and risk global nuclear war, or accept a nuclear strike on an ally. The use of a single tactical nuclear weapon would shatter the nuclear taboo that has held since 1945. Even a limited exchange would cause immense casualties and environmental damage. The danger of miscalculation or accidental escalation is high, given the compressed decision times. Command and control systems would be under extreme stress, and false alarms could trigger a full-scale exchange. The probability of all-out nuclear war is low but non-zero, and the consequences would be catastrophic. In a US-Russia war, the world would quickly polarize. NATO members, including the United Kingdom, Germany, France, and Canada, would almost certainly support the US, as Article 5 would be invoked if a NATO member is attacked. However, some members might waver, particularly Hungary and Turkey, which have pursued closer ties with Russia. The European Union would impose comprehensive sanctions and provide economic support. In the Indo-Pacific, US allies like Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand would side with the US, while India might remain neutral, given its historic defense ties with Russia and strategic competition with China. China would be the most crucial factor. Beijing would likely provide economic and material support to Russia, but it would avoid direct military involvement to preserve its own security and avoid a two-front conflict with the US and its allies. China might supply microelectronics, dual-use technologies, and financial backing. On Russia's side, Belarus would be an active ally, and Syria might allow basing. Venezuela, Iran, and North Korea would offer rhetorical support and possibly weapons, but their military contributions would be limited. Many countries in Africa, Latin America, and Asia would try to stay neutral, but they would face immense pressure from both sides. The conflict would effectively split the world into three blocks: the US-led alliance, a Russia-China axis, and a non-aligned middle. The economic impact of a US-Russia war would be unprecedented. Global trade would be severely disrupted, with shipping lanes threatened, insurance premiums skyrocketing, and supply chains broken. Energy markets would be in turmoil. Europe, heavily dependent on Russian gas, would face an immediate energy crisis, with prices spiking and potential rationing. The US, as a net energy exporter, would be less affected, but global oil prices would surge, causing recession worldwide. Sanctions would be far more extensive than those imposed after 2022. The US and allies would freeze Russian assets, cut off access to SWIFT, and impose export controls on technology. Russia would retaliate by cutting off energy supplies, blocking internet access, and possibly targeting undersea cables. The humanitarian toll would be staggering. Conventional warfare in populated areas would cause mass casualties and displacement. Millions of refugees would flee Eastern Europe, the Baltic states, and possibly beyond. Civilian infrastructure would be devastated, and the use of cyber attacks could disrupt hospitals, water systems, and emergency services. The psychological impact on global society would be profound, with fear of nuclear war hanging over every decision. How would a US-Russia war end? There are three plausible scenarios: escalation to nuclear war, a conventional stalemate, or a negotiated ceasefire. A nuclear exchange, even limited, would cause immense destruction and likely lead to full-scale nuclear war, with billions dead and a possible nuclear winter. The world would be unrecognizable. A conventional stalemate might occur if neither side can achieve decisive victory on the ground, leading to a frozen conflict with recurring skirmishes. Both sides would suffer heavy losses, and the economic strain would force a search for a diplomatic off-ramp. Negotiated settlement would be the best outcome, but extremely difficult. The US would demand the withdrawal of Russian forces from all contested territories, while Russia would seek guarantees that NATO would not expand further and that its interests in Ukraine and Belarus are respected. Neither side would easily compromise. International mediators, such as China or India, might broker peace, but their influence would be limited. A ceasefire would likely leave many issues unresolved, leading to a protracted Cold War-style standoff. The long-term consequences would include massive military spending, a shattered global order, and a deeply divided international community. The world would learn to live with the constant threat of renewed conflict.